Give me a test.
Testing 1 2, testing 1 2.
Gotcha. Now I've got you on my Bluetooth. Nice shirt. How do you like that color?
The color is okay. It's funny you bring that up, the color of this shirt, because I go to grab it. I'm like, you know what? It's good about it is it's just faded yellow enough that it's not too obnoxious yellow.
It's banana cream.
What do you think of it?
I like it a lot.
You like the color? Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually a listener submitted design, as all of them have been, including the color of the t-shirt. But I wouldn't pick it on my own, but I really liked it.
Yeah,
and it looks good on you too.
Well, that's awfully nice of you. Thank you.
Like, I'm just saying, the color, you're wearing it right now. I wouldn't have picked it for myself. I wouldn't have picked it for you, but it looks good on you.
Yeah. Well, you know.
No, I don't know. Tell me.
No, I'm just teasing. I'm just having fun.
Well, quick pre-roll.
Yeah.
We owe a huge shout out to NVS Fins. It's surfnvs.com. The promo code is the word podcast. The fins are also available at core retailers around San Diego and elsewhere. So if you can find them in retail, grab them there, but otherwise grab them on surfnvs.com, promo code podcast, single fins, twin fins, thrusters, quads, anything you need. They come with either futures tabs or FCS tabs. So they fit in whatever fin system you have already in your board. And they are the G10 laminate that they use for the Apex series is just sturdier, lightweight, super fine, refined foils, and they're really hard to beat. So, and they support our work here.
Yeah, I love my NVS fins. And frankly, I could see a future where all fins are made in this sort of technology.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like they should all be as thin and deluxe. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Need Essentials is always with us as well for all your wetsuits and outerwear needs. NeedEssentials.com.
I love my Need Essentials, and like I said last week, the Need Essentials jacket with the water warming up is my absolute key go-to. 1.5 millimeters, super thin and light. Hardly know I have it on, and it's killer. It's killer right now. Water's warm.
Have you needed to size up yet because of Lorna Doone?
I hold it in when I surf. You know?
Okay.
I suck it up.
Smart.
My waist has increased. I don't know if it's Lorna Doone or sourdough or what, but
as long as it's not in the belly, leave it around the waist, and your jacket will still fit right up to that point.
Oh, sounds like you know.
Yeah, I do know, actually. All right. Need Essentials. Everything you need, nothing you don't. NeedEssentials.com.
Yeah, Guy. Welcome, everybody. It is Spit, the Spit podcast, where we talk all things surf and some other stuff as well. I see my friend David Scales, our co-host, a fearless leader. He's got his athletic greens. He's shaking it up because that's his morning ritual, to drink the athletic greens. David, I've got a question for you.
Talk to me.
The first known surfer, historically, the very first known surfer, do you know who it is?
No.
Well, I didn't either until yesterday, and I found out that. Yeah.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it a 17th century Polynesian queen?
Yeah, almost. I think 16th century princess is the right answer. They found this. They dug up. They did some archaeological digging, and they found a surfboard in the princess's tomb. Of course, this happened a while ago, but I just found out about it yesterday. But that's kind of cool, right? That the very first known surfer is a woman, a Polynesian princess on Oahu, and I'm sure that board is in the Bishop Museum somewhere.
This is obviously pulled from Jim Kempton's new book.
How did you know? Seriously. Like, did you know I was interviewing Kempton? Did I tell you or something?
No, you didn't tell me, but his publisher sent me the PDF, the PDFA of the book a week or two ago. And I started skimming through it at the time, and it was like a press release with obviously the PDF. And then the New York Post wrote an article about it. And so I did read the New York Post article. I think yesterday it came out about exactly that, and about how, yeah, it's obviously not just a regal sport, but also a sport of queens.
Yeah, so here's what's kind of semi-interesting is that I ran into Kempton. He's a buddy of mine. And I forget where I ran into him. But I was like, hey, let's do a podcast. And he's like, yeah. And so we did a podcast yesterday. I had no idea that he had a book out. I swear to God. So at the end of the podcast, I'm like, so that, what else could we talk about? And he's like, looked at me kind of, he's like, I don't know. Should we talk about the book? And I'm like, what book? I have no idea yet.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
I guess I'm not on the PR list that he had created, but.
So he said yes to recording the podcast because he just presumed that you knew the book. Like, he thought the reason why you were pitching the idea of a podcast was to talk about the book.
Well, no, he asked me, he goes, hey, let's do a podcast. I didn't even ask him. Okay, I just saw him in passing and he's like, hey, let's do a podcast. And I was hilarious. Like, yeah, that would be because he's actually a great interview. I don't know if you've interviewed him, but you should, because he's super intelligent.
You had him sit in on an episode of Spit years ago, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, when we were at the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center. I don't know what he was promoting at the time, but he happened to be there, and he sat in for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah. And, so Jim used to be on my, a couple of times he was on my terrestrial radio show in San Diego. One time he came in with Cassie and Meador and we did a segment, and then another time. And he was so great that oftentimes I would need a co-host to sit in, because my co-hosts they weren't very reliable.
I remember.
Paid. And I'm like, hey, Kempton, can you come in next week? And he's like, yeah. So he's, like I said, he's not at a lack of words, but his words are, it's not just filler.
Right.
He's got some great insights.
Well, I could send you that PDF if you're interested.
I would love to. I think he's going to send me a copy of his book. So we eventually did get around to his book at the end there, but.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's really well researched, and it's big, Yeah. So that's kind of like, I opened it up originally like, oh, I'll read through this and then reach out, maybe interview him. And then I started getting through it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's
basically, it's kind of a semi-encyclopedia. It's 468 pages long.
It's kind of a text almost,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it probably presents as a coffee table book.
Yes, it does.
But it's kind of like a text. It's very, it's got a lot of historical information in it. I want to say real quick before we get too deep into the show that we're giving away that Channel Islands Too Happy in about a week and a half.
Right. How do people sign up to win that? Is that for subscribers only?
Yes. So support our work, $5 a month. It's the way that we run our business. And as a thank you, we like to do things like this and also promote board builders, to not just be advertising athleticgreens.com/surf, which is beneficial for everyone's health, but really to promote kind of the surfboard business. And so this is a way to make sure we always hit that touchstone. And so Channel Islands was kind enough to support us in this effort. And the Too Happy is obviously a board they've been promoting the last 2 months, kind of the everyman shortboard, made for kind of a broader range of surfers, not just the high performance surfers, and a broader range of waves. You can check it out at CI Surfboards, but we are giving one away to one of our subscribers. If you don't already support our work, you can do it at surfsplendorpodcast.com. There's a support the show link along the top menu bar, and you could set up $5 monthly support. It takes less than a minute to do. You could cancel at any time, but anybody who supports our work in the month of June has a recurring subscription or just supported once will get entered to win this board. We'll pick a random name on July 1st.
Well, the Too Happy, I'm looking at it right now on the cisurfboards.com website, and somebody's going to be very, very happy. They might even be too happy when they get this.
Ooh,
if there is
perfect, Scott.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be fun. Let's give that thing away. Subscribers. By the way, you and I spoke, on the phone a little bit yesterday about another way to perhaps show our stoke for our subscriber base by creating some sort of subscriber only Zoom event where you and I basically just talk to you guys, the listeners. I mean, we want to, you're the reason that we do this. It's a ton of fun for David and I, but we appreciate, the listenership and the loyal listenership, and we have quite a few. So the subscribers, I don't know, David and I are going to talk about it offline, what we do, but it might be something like this, David, where we just do a Zoom call, a private Zoom call with subscribers only, and you guys can pick our brain or talk to us or do whatever you want.
I'd be curious to hear what subscribers want before we do this. So give us feedback on it, because I don't want to just be like, all right, Zoom call, and then have no plan at all. I would like to have some sort of concept or structure or conversation topics maybe that we set up in advance, so that I feel weird just being like, hey guys, here we are, talk to us, like I want there to be some sort of game plan in place. So what should that game plan be? You and I can figure it out on our own, but if listeners want to chime in advance, I'm open to that feedback.
Yeah, and it could be something as cool as maybe we bring on a shaper.
Oh yeah.
And we have them on with us, and we let the the subscribers can just kind of talk to the shaper, and we sit back in the back and moderate if that's the way it goes,
Which is what we do at the Boardroom show. I mean, and it's all in person. So this would be a way to kind of make it virtual for people who aren't in San Diego in September.
Yeah.
I like it. Let's do it. I have a buddy who is kind of getting into YouTube. He's doing a vlog on YouTube, and he's getting it started, and he's a few weeks in, and he's talking to me about the workload involved and how to be consistent, and it's kind of discouraging. And if the numbers aren't growing, it's, hard to keep going. And my advice to him, or not advice, but just my experience that I told him about was, if it wasn't for our listeners, there's no way that we would have stayed consistent week in and week out. Like our listeners have almost created a sense of obligation within me to keep doing this. And I'm so grateful that that's been the case, because now we can look back on a body of work that's 8 years old that we're actually really proud of and have gotten good at something. And yeah, we did the work along the way, but we were only doing it because we were held accountable by the listeners, ultimately, is what it comes down to,
Absolutely. We're stoked on our loyal listenership. And I mean, we've had it for quite a while. I mean, there's guys that we get emails from, they're like, hey, I was listening to Scott back in San Diego. There's a guy that was listening to our show when I was doing it at Surfer Magazine.
Yeah, I've told you this before. I listened to it back then,
Oh, yeah,
and I'd only catch one or two occasionally, and then it would switch platforms. So I felt like I wasn't always certain where I could find it, but I did listen back then.
You did the hard yard of trying to find where the hell I was going. I would disappear and it'd be like, oh, I guess it's over. Hey, speaking of listeners, I got an email. Enjoyed your debate about surfing in the Olympics a couple of weeks ago. You hinted that if the Olympics were in London, there'd be problems finding a challenging enough wave. In 2012 London Olympics, the sailing venue was about 80 miles away. Admittedly, July can be sketchy for swell in Cornwall and Devon, but if you extend the possibility that the rest of the UK is in the mix, we have thousands of miles of coastline, including some tasty north-facing Arctic Ocean swell spots, and 2 wave pools, one in Northern Wales and Bristol. Job done. But what we do know is that the Olympics, interestingly, they're coming up in about a month, actually a month from today, July 23rd. And it is June 23rd, 2021 right now. A month from the day the Olympics start. And what we know is that the next Olympics are in France, and the surfing will be at Chopu. And then the next 4 years, 2028 in Los Angeles, the surfing will undoubtedly be at lower trestles, in my opinion. And that seems to be the spot. And then the next Olympic Games, David, is in Brisbane, Australia. So another great opportunity for surfing. They'll probably have it somewhere on the Gold Coast. So what the next Olympics out from that, nobody knows, but seems like from a surfing standpoint, all of those venues are ideal for surfing.
We're in good hands, at least for the next decade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is good. It'd be interesting if there's a snapper event for the Olympics and not the CT.
Well, I mean, will the CT even, what will it form? I mean, it's funny if you look at the history of the CT and you think of it like, okay, there was the IPS that lasted for, I don't know, 8 years until like the early 80s, maybe less than 8 years, maybe 5 years. I don't have it in front of me. Then the ASP went for a pretty good run. And now we've got the WSL. I mean, if you averaged it out, it seems like every governing body has seemed to last for, I mean, the ASP was around for a couple of decades.
20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. The how far in is the WSL now? About 8 years?
Pretty far in. I don't know the exact, it was right around, I feel like it was right after the New York ASP event that the
10 years?
WSL kind of stepped in. Paul Speaker kind of stepped in and beat his chest like a gorilla and just said, I am here, the NFL.
Well, before we get into the WSL, because there could have been a final nail in the coffin this past week.
Whoa. Foreshadowing.
But before we get into that, I also got, did you go see, I saw maybe you posted it on your Instagram stories, the latest Dana Brown film?
I really want to see it. I haven't seen it. I've seen little snippets, and I interviewed Dana for the Boardroom podcast when he was making this film. So I felt like I was on the inside with Dana. Like he gave me a lot of really great stories, and you know, frankly, I'm one to sort of poo-poo, and it's not right. It's contempt prior to investigation, but I generally poo-poo surf movies in general, because I'd rather just go see a feature film that's more interesting to me. It has nothing to do with, it's more about the subject matter than it is the actual content of the film. And that's the case here, contempt prior to investigation, which is perhaps man's greatest sins, for sure one of my greatest sins. But I want to see this film, is my point, because I did interview Dana, and I've heard really, really good things about this movie. And maybe it's my age, I'm getting older, and I'm looking back on things, and I have a more global view, sort of a more historical view on things now than I did, say, even 10 years ago. But anyway, I want to see it. I really do want to see it, and that's sincere. And I can see it tonight.
Dana, why can you see it tonight? Is it on Amazon?
I think it's at the La Paloma here in NC.
Oh, okay. So Dana Brown is the son of Bruce Brown, who made The Endless Summers. And on Any Given Sunday, is it on Any Given Sunday or just Any Given Sunday?
Let's let the listeners do the Google search.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And this is a film about his father. So this is Dana's film about his father. And I watched it. Somebody sent me a copy of it like months ago, and it's phenomenal. It's really, really good. And it's intimate. Like it almost, I think it's good. Actually, now that I'm thinking this through, it might be good. Might appeal to everybody. What I was going to say is, I think it was so appealing to me because we know the character so well. And it felt like going through a family scrapbook with Dana. But, by the way, his dad isn't the only character. What I mean when I say all the characters, it's like Grubby Clark, somebody who we haven't seen, and like you've seen a few photos. There's a handful of photos that exist, but you don't really see a lot of moving pictures of Grubby Clark. And so they go and they do a road trip and they visit Clark in Oregon, and they spend time together because Bruce and Gordon were friends when they were really young. And so they're just so comfortable together, And so all of that stuff had so much intrigue to me because, again, I feel like I've known these characters for so long, and this just really expanded upon their color, and it gave me a much more multifaceted kind of appreciation of their personalities. Gordon Clark has become such this kind of mythical figure, and you just think of him in these one or two ways, but he's a complex figure, And so I think the film did a great job of unpacking that. But of course, it's all through the lens of this road trip with Dana and his dad, Bruce. So it's really well done. I forget the name of the film, though.
A Life of Endless Summer is the Bruce Brown story. And it is playing tonight, Friday, June 18th, Saturday through Wednesday. Yeah, it's playing tonight. It's the at La Paloma. Sorry, La
Cool.
Paloma and Encinitas. Yeah.
Cool. And it'll be available. It'll be
night.
available shortly for streaming, I'm sure. And we'll let listeners know when it is. But
shit, I want to go tonight. I'm going to the Dodger game. The Padres are going to beat the Dodgers. Well, you know what? Tomorrow night it's on Thursday, June 24th at 6 p.m.
Cool.
I'm going to go see it. I really want to see it.
Some producer reached out to me to send me the trailer for the latest. Garrett McNamara has a documentary series that's coming out on HBO.
Oh.
It's called 100-Foot Wave, and it's all about him trying to surf a 100-foot wave. And it seems to be mainly centered around Nazare, but it's a documentary series, and it premieres on HBO on July 18th. So look forward to that. He said he's going to send screeners, so I'll send one to you, Scott, when it comes through. But yeah, it looks really well done. I mean, HBO as a production house, or they have production companies they work with, but the stuff that they produce is amazing.
Yeah, the stuff that they greenlight.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that as well. That's where Momentum Generation aired, obviously.
Yeah, that should be good. I'm looking forward to that too. Garrett's quite a character. I've spent some time with him. I've been in some events with him. And that guy is fearless. Yeah. I'm sure in this movie he'll talk that he does have fear. And I think, but I mean, this guy tackles some big surf.
He'll talk about fear and how he kicks the crap out of it when he encounters it.
No, I would be, maybe that's the case. I don't know. I haven't seen, obviously we haven't seen it, but I've sensed, some humility and, fatherhood will do that to you,
Will it?
Yeah, it's coming your way, bro.
All right, humility. Good. I need it.
You're going to be washing that hair.
We're washing the baby's hair, apparently.
Oh yeah, you are.
Got in a huge fight 2 days ago.
Did you really?
No. Not at all. I just acquiesced. I laid down instantly.
Good man. That's
so we got two main topics. We got Electric Acid Surfboard Test episode 2, and of course Surf Ranch.
Yeah. Look, let's talk Electric Acid Surfboard Test episode 2. I watched it. I'm trying to remember what went down. It's all kind of.
I'll tell you the boards if you'd like.
Yeah. Tease me up here a little bit.
The Dead Kooks Yin and Yang Twin, the Paizel Mini Ghost, which is like a mini shortboard.
Oh, I remember. The Dark Arts board looked good.
The Dark Arts Coffin.
Yeah, that board looked good.
Yes, it did. Yeah. The JS Big Baron, the Simon Jones Twin, and then the Mason Ho made a second appearance on the Shriz from Panda. So you want to start Dark Arts?
I mean, just real quick, I can tell you that what I saw on the Dark Arts board, the board looked good, and it wasn't the type of board that I would say, hey, this is the board for this wave. It looked like it might have too much speed. It's wide, plenty of planing area. It looked like a kind of board that might wash out, but both of them seemed to handle the speed, and the board seemed to hold its line through critical turns. And it looked like they were having fun on that board. I mean, that's sort of my takeaway. The board that it looked like they were having the most fun on was that board.
The model is called the Coffin. So we talk about Dark Arts, and what we're really referring to is the construction when we talk.
I don't know about that. I think you need to give Justin some credit for his shaping ability.
Well, what I mean is whenever anybody says Dark Arts, that is the first thing that comes to mind is this construction. And that you're right. That's exactly what I'm saying, is that Justin is a shaper and he makes a bunch of different models. And so the model of this board is the Coffin, and it's short, wide, and round or flat, blunt nosed and blunt tailed. So it's almost like a rectangle. And what I would say, I agree with everything that you said, by the way. It did look really good. It looked like everybody was having fun on it. It actually looks like your cell phone. Now I just looked down at my iPhone, and that you could call that.
Oh my God.
Instead of the Coffin, it's just an iPhone is what that board is. But when you look at the shape, you think that there's going to be a lot of limitations in that design. But what I would what I kind of noticed from watching was it seemed like the deficits, what would be the deficit if that board was a PU, standard construction, the construction, the dark arts construction actually added back some of the sensitivity and the zing that I think that you would otherwise lose if it was a different construction. So the benefit of that shape is speed, essentially. But then because it's so wide, you think that you would lose some of the sensitivity and the like steering, let's say. But I felt like because it's that lightweight, because it's got the the zing of the epoxy and the carbon, it had that sensitivity added back into the board.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like with all surfboard design, there's so many variables here, but my takeaway is whenever I get a wider board, a board that's kind of short and stubby and wider, I feel like it definitely has to at least have pinched rails. It can still hold volume, but I've got so much speed now with all that planing area that when I go out onto the shoulder and start to go into a roundhouse cutback, I need to keep that rail buried throughout that turn. And a lot of times guys will make wide boards and they're like, well, you know, it's a fuller bodied board, and they might tend to have too much volume, at least in the rail area. And that's where I sort of spin out. And the carbon layup that you're talking about, I mean, these are pretty, I believe that the flexes are pretty stiff in these. And Justin might correct me on that. So to me, it's about this very minute and super important dynamic between how thin the rail is relative to how wide the board is. And is that foil thin throughout? I especially like very, very thin tails on my wider boards. And so it could be the case that they just nailed the certain perfect combination for Mason and for Coco.
Yeah, it looked great. Lots of drive out of that board. And even like, I remember big roundhouse cutback and just smashing the whitewash but like flowing through the whitewash. Because the other thing is so much stability in that type of a platform. So just smashing through the whitewash into a new bottom turn, right up in and boom, and able to drift the tail and everything. So I thought that board was really interesting to watch. Mason did a lot of fin adjustments, I think on most of the boards, but on that board specifically as well. And it was interesting how subtle the differences are in the fins when you're just looking at them. And he can feel the differences significantly, and he was trying to communicate the differences, but you could then see it in his surfing as well. So he'd have the MR twin versus, I don't know, whatever model fin, and he's holding them up to the camera, and it's like, man, those look really similar. You know, there's not a lot of the outline, the size is pretty similar. And then he puts them in the board and they look very, very different. One is dragging, one isn't. So, and he was riding those, I think, as a quad. So he'd have like a quad. Yeah. He'd have like a twin set in the front and then you put like quad fins in the back or vice versa. He was mixing them up entirely, but it's worth watching for that those kind of details alone are really interesting to me.
Yeah. You know what? Hold on for a sec because this coffee went right through me, but I'll be right back with some comments. It's like Morse code, ...
What is?
What is, Scott?
My flow rate.
Okay.
A couple things that you mentioned, which I think are important, which is Mason's transitions, like his turns, they're so buttery. It's pretty much like that on all the boards he rides, but you do notice when he finishes through that roundhouse cut back and he goes right into a bottom turn, there's none of these check turns, which, really makes for great style. You and I and everybody's really commented on that. Those moments between the turns are where you really see good surfing. And it's kind of like drumming. I heard one time Neil Peart from Rush say that it's the moments between the drum beats that are the important moments, the space. And that's kind of the way it is with surfing too. I think it's, those transitional moments that you don't really notice because they're so clean. And Mason has that in spades. And I mean, the fin thing is so interesting. I mean, there's just so many variables to surfboards. Fins just being one huge area where I mean, I've told you, and you know this, on my Ekstrom A-Sims, I had 5 different fins in my board, five fin surfboard, and all 5 fins were different because I actually did the work and made all the changes and got to a place where I'm like, this is it, you know, and they were 5 completely different fins made of different constructions. And that was totally just the setup that I liked. And that might not be the setup that you like, you know, and that's my point is like, it's just so personal. All has to do with, you know, how much we weigh and all that stuff, all these different things. It's just, it's fascinating. And that's kind of why the electric acid surfboard test is so fun because, you know, something that they might not ride or like, we might really like. And I think it's important that they convey that message.
Yeah, I think they do unintentionally. The Shriz, the Panda surfboard Shriz making a second appearance under Mason's feet, I think validates what you said from episode 1, which is that looks like the board. He looked the most comfortable on it. It just looks the most natural. It doesn't look like he's trying to figure it out in any way. It's different than his shortboards that he usually rides that we see him in his videos on, but he looks totally comfortable and natural on it. And the board just goes.
Yeah, it looked like a fun surfboard, a great surfboard, a well-made surfboard. And yeah, it's just one of those, everything fit like a glove, you know, like OJ.
It didn't fit for OJ though.
Depends who you ask. If you ask the jury,
yeah, when he puts it on in the trial, I was a 14-year-old at the time. I was like, looks like it fits to me. And then everybody's like, if it don't fit, you must have quit. And I'm like, it looks like it fits.
Who knows?
At any rate, how did you feel about our criticisms of Mason last week versus episode 2? Were they still relevant in episode 2?
Not quite as much. I don't think that's not my takeaway from episode 2. My big takeaway from episode 2 is that Simon Jones, I think it was the Simon Jones, which was the longer twin fin. Was that the Simon Jones? Which one was that?
No, that was the Dead Kooks yin and yang twin.
Yeah, the Dead Kooks board. To me, those waves. So when I see it, and I've had, as you know, I've had many boards, and I've had big, you know, twin fins. Like I had like a 9-foot twin fin once, you know, like almost like a longboard twin fin, but pulled in nose. But anyway, my point is that those bigger sort of megalodon twin fins, you know, that are like larger, kind of like skip fry twin fins, if you will. I've always found those to be really good for sort of open ocean waves that you're going to get into early, that you have plenty of time to kind of S down the face and wait for it to kind of hit the reef and then do your bottom turn. And then it gets kind of fat, and that like real peely kind of wave. And the smaller ones that they were riding on that board just didn't really do the board justice, in my opinion. That's just not the type of wave you want for that board. You want something where, like I say, it peaks up way outside in the kelp, and you're 20 yards out further out than anybody, and you have time to get into the wave and do a real elongated, maybe go left, go right bottom turn. And that wave just didn't do it justice.
Yeah, you can't fit that board on that wave, basically. Exactly. But I'm wondering if maybe they had some of those boards in case the waves got real small, you know?
Well, that's my point. I feel like that board would be good for a place like Punta Perfecta, you know, like sort of an open ocean wave that breaks far out, that, you know, that has a ton of energy, that you want a bigger board just to be able to get around the ocean on from a paddling perspective, that type of thing.
The Simon Jones was the one, the artwork on it was like a big circle in the middle. It looked like a real flat entry rocker, kind of a rounder outline, which it looked good. Simon, it wasn't the same model, but a Simon Jones board was selected by Stephanie Gilmore and her as the winner of her electric acid surfboard test. And this board looked good under their feet, but I don't think it's going to win the event, you know? And again, that flatter rocker seemed to be catching as they're trying to rip on the board. It would catch here and there and they would surf through it. But there was just moments that the board didn't look as strong as it has in past performances, I thought.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned Dane Reynolds sort of surfing boards the way that they're not supposed to be surfed, and that was when I watched that, I thought of your comment. I was like, not sure they're really surfing this board the way it's meant to be surfed.
Yeah.
Maybe more like long down the line sort of, rock and roll, flowy surfing rather than straight up, straight down.
Yeah, Steph was more like almost upright and back on the board, and just letting that kind of, I don't know, the volume in front be out in front of her and then steering from the back. And there's moments where she'll get low and lean into a bottom turn, let's say, to project. But I feel like Mason is just wound up on it, like he's crouched and he's just wound up going for every little section, and the board just doesn't quite respond that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really enjoyed episode 2. I agree. There was not as much of the Mason
stepping on, sort of.
Yes.
He would step on a lot of Coco's commentary.
Yeah. In episode 1, and that probably is because in episode 1 they were really just spent 15 minutes just assessing the boards, so there was a lot of talking was required of them, whereas episode 2 I felt like it was much more focused on surfing and then just a quick discussion of the boards or the fins, and a lot of that was on the beach soaking wet. So I think it all just worked a lot more seamlessly and naturally. So I loved it. I loved episode 2. I'm all in on this series and can't wait for the next episode. And this is why I like supporting Stab Premium, is they're better at this type of thing than any other surf media outlet has been at it. Like, they kind of own this thing, which is Stab in the Dark, electric acid surfboard test. And so by supporting, like, Stab Premium is worth it just for this sort of thing. If I never read any of the premium articles or anything, I would support it just to get 4 of these types of things a year for sure.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and I've been a Stab Premium supporter since day one, and I agree. They own it, and to their credit, they're open-minded enough to make changes, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but it's not like we're getting the same thing every time. Like, they do change it up, which is fresh. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, they're great at taking the pulse of what the feedback is and all that sort of stuff, and then making adjustments. And a lot of those adjustments are obvious after they complete the project, then it's like, oh, we should have done this. And so then they implement that. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and I think they're doing a great job.
So this means, of course, that it's quite possible that next time for the electric acid surfboard test, we will have a shaper be the surfer.
Well, Kelly Slater is supposed to be the next one.
That'll be pretty good.
2 other names.
I'm already looking forward to that. That better happen. You better not let us down, David, with your.
They said it. They better not let you down.
Oh, right. That's right.
Danny Johnson said it.
Right.
Another name that somebody mentioned last.
Has he been fired yet for that, do you think?
No. Another name that somebody mentioned that would be a good shaper surfer is Ellis Erickson.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
great surf
for me.
Not out of left field, out of Australia, Scott. So it's out of you. Ellis, his dad obviously was a surfboard shaper. Ellis was a pro surfer growing up. He's been investing heavily in shaping in the last, 5+ years, and working like really, really great shaper, great surfer. He'd be a great fit. So,
what I've come to realize is maybe we have a whole new series for them. Maybe there's East, maybe there's Stab in the Dark, and maybe there's a shaper only thing, whatever they brand it. We could sit here and tinker with what that looks like. Obviously, it wouldn't be just East with a shaper. It would need to be something different.
Whole new brand, yeah.
Whole new brand of video content that's shaper oriented, and maybe it's shaper on shaper. Like, maybe you get 2 shapers, they switch each other's boards, they ride each other's equipment, and and I'm just riffing here. I'm just fully whiteboarding with you right now. Maybe that's something that would be fun, like shaper on shaper. Like Spy versus Spy.
Relevant reference, good, modern reference. Do you want to explain that to everybody, or should they just start Googling?
Well, during the Civil War, there was this cartoon. No, I'm not gonna. It's in Mad Magazine. I know you can't even. Now I have to explain Mad Magazine to people.
Exactly. Now you have to explain a magazine to people.
Right, exactly. What were those things called, magazines? Kempton and I get pretty deep into the magazine thing. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, because.
But only if you're old.
So Surf Ranch, Scott, did you watch?
I did. I actually watched a ton of it, and only because I was watching golf. So because I was watching golf, I could put the Surf Ranch on my laptop. And by the way, I just figured out that the YouTube feed is the way to go. Like, I was complaining
Totally.
and I didn't know. And somebody goes, dude, watch the YouTube feed. And so I kind of poo-pooed on the WSL's app, which I guess deserves to be poo-pooed on. But I watched the YouTube feed. It was much better. And I watched a ton of it. I watched the finals, and I watched the semifinals. And I thought Kelly Slater was sort of underscored, to be honest with you. And we don't need to get into the weeds on scoring or anything. My overall global take on it is this. And I wrote a little something. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I'll elaborate on while you're looking that up. The reason you were complaining about the app, for listeners, the app constantly bogs out, and even the web stream on their website bogs out every, I want to say, like 20 minutes or so for me. So I have to constantly be refreshing the feed, and each time you refresh it, you have to sit through a set of commercials. So you miss a lot, and it's just a hassle. There's also a live stream on YouTube, and the live stream on YouTube plays seamlessly. The other benefit of that is that there's no commercials. So it seems like it would be more boring. They cut away to just a stagnant shot looking down the length of the pool, and you almost think like it's frozen. And then you see a little ripple in the foreground. You go, okay, it's not frozen. So that is when they're normally taking commercial breaks.
Well, that's the exact feed that Fox Sports gets. That's why there's that break.
Right.
That's the exact feed of Fox Sports. Yeah.
But for us who's viewing it on YouTube,
right,
it is a reprieve from the monotonous commercials. Because if you're watching the feed through their website or their app, they give you the same commercial pack every single break. And they probably take 3 or 4 breaks per heat. So we're talking 3 or 4 times in a 30-minute window, you have to watch the same sequence of commercials. And it's grating. It's just
it's almost torturous.
It really kind of is. Well, I think the reason why they do it is they don't expect anybody to watch for 8 hours. But you and I sit here for 8 hours glued to it. And it's like after the 3rd heat, we just want to rip our hair out. I'm now anti the product. At first, it's like the commercial's supposed to make you want to buy a Jeep. By the end of it, I'm just like, I will never drive a Jeep in my life because they're giving me this water torture.
Yeah. And I look at people who drive Jeeps and scorn.
Exactly. But with the YouTube feed, as you noted, it's a cleaner stream and you avoid all of that. And I actually appreciate that little bit of silence,
Well, so my take on it is twofold. And the first one's sort of mine, and the second one I'm going to steal from Jim Kempton, we talked about it a little bit. But the pro surfing that I witnessed at Lemoore last week was about as close to surfing being sort of a true sport as we're ever going to get. We had a fixed format, a fixed and exact wave, fixed expectations. It was athletic. The athleticism was mind-blowing. Like, totally. It was difficult to do what those guys were doing. And there were moments, especially at the end, I think, where there was a lot of pressure. You felt the pressure that the competitors were under. And then Kempton's take on it, which I think is perfect, and it's something that you and I've talked about at length, is that really what this is coming down to is, do they stick the aerial? Everything else is compulsory. You have to do all of that other stuff or you're just out. So what it's really boiling down to are these 2 or 3 moments. Do they land and or stick the aerial? And at that point, it's just like gymnastics. Does the girl at the end or the guy stick the landing and throw their arms perfectly and in balance? Jim brought up a great point. When you watch the diving, the high diving, they do all of these insane things. But what's important? the landing. Is there a splash? Like, that's the difference between a 9.9 and a 10.0, is the amount of splash or the amount of balance or lack thereof in the gymnastic event. And it's the same thing with surfing. Do they stick it cleanly? If there's a bobble, oh, then we've got a 9.6 rather than a 9.9. So if we're just getting down to that, I mean, at the end of the day, that's not surfing. That's this thing called a surf contest at the wave pool. But you know, and we've droned on long enough about how it's just not what our experience is in the water. So we're less likely to be able to you know, be tied to it emotionally. It's just not our experience.
Agreed. I really feel like on this show we should, I don't know, I'm almost apprehensive to even talk about Surf Ranch because I don't know what the hell we are doing here anymore. It's so far removed, and it's so almost offensive to me that it's on tour. And so I'm almost apprehensive to even talk about it. Like, giving it any breath means that we care and that we're invested. And
do we make a pact right now on this show?
No more
discussion.
This might be the last one.
I'm gonna, dude, you gotta.
I'm gonna do it now because I did watch the. I'm gonna do it now because I did watch the event, and there is some relevant to surf culture stuff that we need to say about it. But moving forward, it's like, I don't have anything to talk about anymore. I've beat the dead horse. But what I want to say before I do all of that, before I beat the dead horse,
now you're going to eat the dead horse.
is I want listeners to understand and filter all of this through this one sentiment. And that is, this is regressive for our sport. This is not progress. And so occasionally people will say, so, like, indicate some value to the event, you know, like, oh, well, you know, I think there are wave pools out there in the world. And so these pro surfers should be able to be the best surfer in the wave pool because that's now a part of the surfing world or whatever. My point is that trumps all of those thoughts is that having this on tour is actually regressive to the tour. So if you have F1 drivers, you want to put them in the fastest cars on the tracks that are going to challenge them the most and have them shave seconds off their mile. This is not doing that. This is putting them in go-karts. And so the way that you can this is not a single turn that they'll do in that pool will be the best turn that we'll see on tour this year. Not a single air that we will see in that pool will be the best air that we'll see on tour this year. Not a single barrel we'll see in this pool will be the best barrel we'll see on tour this year. The reason why Chopu and Pipeline are on tour is because those are going to present barrels that are going to challenge the surfers in ways that no other wave on the planet can challenge them. There's, you know, air spot. I'm struggling to think of one right now, but
just Gabriel the airs Medine, that they do at, say,
Narrabeen, Gabe's left air that he did at Narrabeen, exactly. You know, like something like that you will never see in the wave pool. And so all of that is progress. That is progressing the sport of surfing. And so whenever I level this criticism on the pool, it's not just to be nitpicky or to be a douche. I'm angry because I feel like, wrongly, by the way, I feel like the WSL, competitive professional surfing, is ours. I don't criticize Quicksilver in this way. I don't criticize Billabong in this way because that's not ours. That's an entity. But for some reason, we all feel like we grew up with competitive professional surfing and it's ours collectively. And part of what we want collectively is a progression of the sport. That's what we expect professional surfing to do. And the hands that it's in right now, and even when it was in the ASP's hands, it would make missteps along the way and everybody would be outraged, and the ASP would often adjust, and the WSL adjusts as well. But we're seeing this doubling and tripling down on this wave pool investment because they bought the pool and they need to advertise the pool so that they could sell pools around the world. They need to put it on tour. But we see that it undermines the initial goal over and over again, which is progression. We want the sport to progress. And the fact that some of the best surfers in the world are nullified by this pool. I mean, look, Kelly Slater can't get more than a 7 at his own
Kelly
pool.
he ripped that pool to shreds. But yeah,
dude. And so
but
the fact
like he's not on Gabe's level.
That's problematic, you know? And so, and again, this all goes in addition to what I've said in previous weeks, which is we want the WSL to succeed, and we're looking at them shooting themselves in the foot. And so the way that the WSL will succeed is by focusing on man versus nature and woman versus nature, because it's something that no other sport has the way that surfing has. And so that's the magic sauce that you need to bottle. And this is so adjacent to that they're not relatable. And then it has all of these other things that it's doing, which is it's regressive. It's actually slowing the sport, the progress of the sport. We used to complain about the 3 to the beach model, you know, like, oh God, it gets so boring watching somebody do 3 to the beach. Let's reward aerials. Let's reward the one big maneuver. This is now 8 to the beach. This is actually 12 to the beach. This went from, and that's what I'm talking about with regression. It's like, you're talking about it's compulsory. They're going to do the 12 compulsory turns that we don't even watch. You know, like I'm literally cooking in the kitchen. The silence of the YouTube feed commercial goes away, and that's, oh, so-and-so's back up and riding. I glance and I go, okay, cool. I'll look back in about 30 seconds when they're going for the critical section. When has that ever happened in life where a surf contest is on, somebody catches a wave and you look away from the screen? That never has happened, you know? And so these are huge, huge problems. Go. Sorry.
No. You're killing it. You've kind of nailed it. I mean, my only takeaway from what you just said is I think you encapsulated it perfectly. I personally am looking forward to surfing that wave again. And those are two totally different things, totally different things. And I want to acknowledge that I love surfing that wave. Super killer. We can still market the wave. We just don't need to do it through the WSL. Like the Wave Ranch, the Kelly Slater Surf Company or Wave Pool Company or KS, whatever it's called, they can market this thing without the surf contest. Like I personally signed up for going there. I think in November I'm signed up through some buddies that are going. I'm like, you know what? I want to go. Like it actually pencils out kind of when you think about cost of airfare now and rental cars and everything.
But fully agree. Everybody agrees. They want to surf that wave. There's no question.
The wave's killer. It's a killer wave. Don't get us wrong.
But I would argue now, if their goal was to advertise this pool so that other people would buy it, advertise it through the World Tour, they're not servicing that goal either. All they're doing is stirring up a bunch of vitriol against the pool by putting it on tour. And there's been times where people complain about events online, and there's some there's like, sure, there's going to be complainers, but then there's other people who viewed it positively. I see overwhelmingly negative feedback about this event.
Let me ask you this.
I don't see any positivity online about it.
Let me ask you this, assuming, and I assume this, I think this is the case. I think that somebody up there told me they can do this. They can ramp that wave up so it's just a mean barrel the whole way. Like that right-hand barrel, the middle right-hand barrel, not the end right-hand barrel. But I think they can turn it up to what they call CT3, or maybe it's CT4, but it's another level.
Gotta be 4. They were running 3 at this event.
Okay, so CT4, where I've heard you almost, it's really hard to catch. You almost need to get towed into it. And this could just be parking lot innuendo. I'm trying to remember where I heard this, but let's assume that. I look at Waco and I go, you know what they did? Stab did a really cool little like air event there. You know, it wasn't a World Tour event. It was just this thing. And you know what?
Exactly.
It marketed the shit out of that pool. People were like, I'm going. I want to go do aerials.
Yes.
I think if they could get that section there, like what I'm getting at is you could invite, say, 8 really great tube riders that aren't on the CT and ramp that thing up to like a tube riding event and just have a fun little tube riding event. Don't make it too big of a deal. Don't make it the end all be all, but we invited 8 guys. Let's see what could happen. Let's see who gets the deepest tube. That would be a good way to get the wave.
Exactly. And they've got a reality show planned, Surfing with Celebrities, that is going to be set there. And that'll be a great marketing tool. fully agree with all of that. This would have been a great exhibition event, and I would have watched it and I wouldn't have felt negatively about it. But the fact that it is on tour and that world championship points are accumulating through this event, like ultimately, Felipe Toledo looks like the man who could win the world title this year. He can beat Gabe at lowers.
Well,
Through his,
his
performance here, I'm looking at him going, and through his performance at Margaret River as well, I'm going, shoot, lowers as a venue. He's got Gabe's number right now. He could win it.
Doubt. There is no doubt. I would say that Felipe and Gabe are kind of neck and neck, 1A and 1B. And I would say this too. If we had the Purple Blob Tour, guess where we would have already had an event? It just 2 weeks ago or a week ago. Chopu was on fire. And if we could have flown and been nimble and flown 24 guys or less, the top 16 to Chopu, we could have had an event in a day and in mean macking legit Chopu. Now we're going to Chopu after the Olympics. And is it before the Olympics? I think it's Chopu after the Olympics.
I could look it up right now.
Anyway, my point is we've got to wait and hope for a swell. And because we got these 2 weeks and if there's a swell, there is. Now, if there is, great. And it's going to hopefully level the playing field. And maybe Felipe rises to the occasion. That would be great too. Frankly, I think it would be a really great story if Felipe got into the semis or the finals in 8 to 10 foot Chopu and then went on to win the world title. But now if we get small Chopu and it's just not what we expected, and then we go and you get where I'm going here, like we haven't had a wave of consequence on tour this year.
Fully agree.
I guess you could say pipeline.
And I don't remember how Felipe did at Pipe, but look, Felipe's earning it, we can't take anything away from him. Everybody got dealt a hand of cards and he's playing them better than anybody else. I mean, Gabriel is, but Felipe's coming from behind and, but it's not great. It's not progress. It's not like, I would have loved to have seen how he would have done at Sunset.
I agree.
I would love to have seen how he would have done at G-Land, like those original venues.
So Felipe got 1,300 points at Pipe, which means 17th place.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at, right? Like if he wins the world title and Chopu doesn't provide, then we're going to be kind of going, well, we all knew this. We all knew Felipe is the best, if not one of the top 2 or 3 best in the world in 4 to 5 foot waves.
Exactly.
But I need a world champion.
1 to 5 foot.
I want a world champion that owns an H6.
Exactly.
And I say that, a guy that's like, oh, let's go to Puerto Escondido. It's pumping. Like, I want that guy.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it really undermines the entire effort of the WSL to not have those venues on tour.
Yeah, I agree.
And to be, by the way, replacing them with this venue is a huge misstep. But I don't know, maybe we draft that document, Scott, and we both sign it to never talk about this again, because I really feel like this is no longer ours. Like
yeah. Like why? Like, did we talk about wave storms? No, we've got to
exactly.
This is basically the wave storm of surf contest. That is that's a bumper sticker. We've got to have some sort of like Vulcan mind meld where we both like through Zoom, like put our hands onto the screen and just like say some sort of, we have some sort of joint agreement,
I agree. And honestly, I guess what was saddest to me is that they lost. I don't care anymore. Like I started typing out like a pretty long essay about what I was experiencing, like all of these thoughts to put together to either discuss here on the podcast or something. And I got,
let it out, David.
Like, no,
let the toxins out of your body.
I got 2 paragraphs in and I just thought, you know what? I don't even care to write this anymore. Like, I don't care anymore. It's not that I'm even angry about it anymore. They lost me as a fan. They lost me as a viewer. They lost me with kind of believing in the mission. The mission is now entirely different than what we want it to be and what we think it should be and what we think would be better for the sport. But hey,
you know what? You
tell me.
You remind me of Doug Palladini, who during the .com sort of bust, he was taken from Surfer, and I think he went to work for Swell, and they were killing it. And then everybody got laid off. The whole thing blew up. And Doug was sort of searching for a job. And I hope Doug will chime in if I'm getting this wrong. But Doug went on a rant about Vans. Like, he sent out this weekly newsletter. It was like kind of like state of the industry according to Doug Palladini. And he would write this newsletter, and every newsletter was like, look at Vans' stock price and their market cap. And he went into these deep dives on how Vans is absolutely blowing it, you know, and it was like, it was really well done, which is Doug Palladini. Everything he does is really well done. And guess who eventually hired him? Vans. And guess how killer Vans is now, thanks in a large part to his leadership, Doug Palladini. Now, Doug and I didn't necessarily always see eye to eye, but I knew the guy was brilliant, and from a business standpoint. And this is what you're reminding, you're setting yourself up to be the new CEO of the WSL. And frankly, I can't think of a better person for it. Like, you get it. You get
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's generous.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
What if they came to you and they said, hey, you know what? We'd like to talk to you. And they're like, we'd like to bring you in as a consultant, or
I'll send you a screen.
Would you take the meeting?
I'll send you a screenshot of a text message that indicates that they will not be calling me in for that meeting.
Dude, you never know. The guy who sent that message is probably out. Like, somebody above him is like, you know what? You guys are blowing it. David Lee Scales gets it.
Well, look, I can be an armchair quarterback. Like, getting it, understanding the right ethos and direction is very different than running a business, you know? Yeah. And so I'm sure that they've got much more qualified people running the business end of things, but those people need to those people still do need to be making decisions centered around this initial tenet that I keep talking about and harping on, because without it, there's no point. Without it, nothing else works. And I'm saying this I'm saying this with the business in mind, and with the business in mind. Like, the only way that the business succeeds is by man versus nature, which means best surfers in the world at the best waves in the world, period.
And very few of them. Very few of the very best surfers in the world.
Totally. I've got an interesting must-see moment, Scott.
Yes. Please enlighten me.
If you go to Patagonia.com now, it should be on the homepage. They might bump it off the homepage within a week or something, but Joe Curran wrote a piece about his father called The Last Dory. And I think it's about a 10-minute read. And it is epic. First of all, we love Joe Curran. Yeah. And his dad is just such again, one of those mythical figures in surfing. And Joe provides such intimate insights into who his dad is. And it's a lot about them traveling in Baja with a handmade boat, and just so many little details in it, you know, about wave surfed, foods eaten, books that his dad would read, you know, and then hand off to Joe, Don Quixote, just little morsel tidbits that are so rich and juicy. So that's available on Patagonia.com. It's a written piece. There are photographs that go with it as well that are embedded.
I'm clicking on it. I'm clicking on it, but it won't let me go anywhere.
Did you get to their homepage?
Yeah, and I see it, and it says read, and there's a button, and I'm clicking on the button. It's not doing anything.
Okay, well,
but maybe that's my browser. Maybe it's a browser issue.
Yeah, figure it out later. But it's well worth reading. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, and I love seeing Joe Curran. You know.
Yeah, I'm a fan of everything Curran. So
Joe Curran is such a mild-mannered, low-key figure. We don't really see much of him anymore. So to see his name pop up was really cool. But his surfing back in the day, when he was actually featured in surf films in the 90s, it's freaking remarkable, man. And I mean, obviously the brother of Tom. So there's so much style. Joe's got so much style, similar to his brothers, but different. Yeah. And just, I can't get enough. So I was thrilled to see that. And I think it was really well written as well. So.
Well, that's good stuff. I'm going to check it out. So My must-see moment is actually a podcast.
Yes.
And I sent it to you.
Must-listen moment.
Did I send it to you? It's
you just sent it to me while we were recording.
Yeah. And what is it, David? Decoder. It is Decoder. It's a podcast by the Verge Network, Decoder. And this one is with the CEO of Patreon, Jack Conte. And if you are a content creator, and most of us are, this is, in my opinion, must listen. And I know, Dave, you'll give it a listen, but check that out. The Decoder podcast with special guest Jack Conte.
What was your takeaway from it as a content creator? What did it excite in you?
The big takeaway is that payment for creators is changing for the better. And basically within the next 10 years, we're going to see creators getting income that they deserve and not the big tech platforms taxing the living crap out of you. I mean, if you go on YouTube and you try to become a creator, he went on to say he made a video that was getting 1 million views. He would make videos that would get 1 million views and he would get $160. And those videos took him, 3 weeks each one to make, and he was just saying there's got to be a better way. And he sort of, elaborates on all those touch points on how he's helping to make it so that creators can get paid. Bands, podcasters, vloggers, YouTubers, whatever it is, if you're a creative person and you're making content, the time is now for the paradigm to be blown up. And Facebook and Twitter and YouTube they've got to stop taking all the monies.
Look, they built incredible platforms. They can take whatever monies that are rightfully theirs, but you and I as creators need to recognize that we don't want to be beholden to that platform. And so that, I think, is what Jack is referencing to, is let's democratize. Like, we real quickly got in a position where 80% of the ad dollars are spent on 2 platforms, right? Facebook and Google. And let's make sure that we don't find ourselves deeper in that bed to a position that we can't get out of bed. And this democratization of content is kind of a revolution. So to be able to,
but is it democratized, right? If it's just 2 platforms, and that's what you're speaking to. Yeah.
It isn't. And so, so that's why we set up our own subscription platform rather than doing it through Patreon. I didn't tell you this, but you could ask Lauren, I spent a month, maybe more, uploading all of our archives over to Patreon. And it was super tedious,
here's the
laborious.
Thing I think you need to listen to this, because Patreon isn't YouTube and it's not Facebook. They don't necessarily want to be a place where people go and commune with their community. It's a place where the community can go and support and become members and subscribers to our content. Our content still resides wherever it resides.
Yeah, but all the transactions run through them. And also they have booted people off because they disagree with the content.
Hey, they go into a deep dive on all of that stuff. You got to listen to it. I agree. Look, he's the first one to say we're a work in progress, but the Patreon model, he's also the first one to say, hey, there should be more Patreons. Like, the more of these opportunities to get out of the ad-based model, which is just, his argument is like, you could have 40 million viewers on YouTube, but of those, 400,000 would be your actual fans,
Yeah.
Like, I go onto YouTube and I would look for like how to change my oil and I listen to the video. It doesn't mean I'm a fan of his, but it counts, and I'm not going to,
Well, so that's what I ultimately, the reason why I backed off Patreon and just decided to do it all on our own was I was trying to figure out what the added value was. What was Patreon going to be providing me? Is there an algorithm? They're going to be pumping me new listeners? No, there isn't.
Well, that's what his thing is. We don't do it that way. Like that's proven
exactly.
To not
so
be
why
effective.
not just do it? So why not just do it on our own and own 100% and not be beholden to the platform?
And I love that too. I'm not here to trump Patreon. I'm here to trump this episode. and listen to it, because it was eye-opening if you're a content creator, you just want to get their viewpoint on things, because he's a creator. The beautiful thing is that he started this thing because he was in a band, and he was like, this is lame. Like the opportunities, I'm getting paid $160 for 1 million views. This is wrong. And there was no way to change it. So he changed it. So, I'm always want to give a kudos and a clap of the hands, to a tip of the hat to somebody like that.
The other great thing about this is listeners and viewers are they're getting better content than they've ever gotten before, and more of it, And so to be able to kind of just put $5 here and I probably have 10 $5 subscriptions set up with various things that I support. And some of it I don't listen to. I'll just get, a podcast. I'll just kind of be over it for 6 months, but I let that subscription keep going. And then 6 months later, I find it again. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so just to be able to support the things that you like, and for those people to be able to be empowered to make a living off of it and continue doing it.
In that vein, I want to say that my must-see moment is, there's a YouTube guy that I watch to learn how to play guitar better. And it's called The Stitch Method. The Stitch Method on YouTube. The guy's name is Ian. And if you're a guitar player, sort of an intermediate level guitar player, I highly recommend him. And he's a guy that I support on Patreon. And, I think I give him $4 a month, and, it is what it is. It's not much, but I appreciate what he's doing. And he's a great teacher. He's a great guitar teacher. So go check out the Stitch Method on YouTube, and you can then go to Patreon and support him if you so choose.
My Duke of the week. It's a shame that it took this long to get to it, but Joe Quigg.
Yes.
Joe Quigg passed away 4 days ago.
Yes.
And it was 5 days short of his 96th birthday. So his 96th birthday could even be today. I'm going to try to look it up while I'm talking. Of course, for something like this, we always rely on Matt Warshaw. I don't know what we would do without Matt Warshaw.
Actually, I think we can go to, I thought the Surfer's Journal did a really good thing on him.
Let me see.
But go ahead.
Well, I'm trying to find his exact birthday real quick. Dang it.
Yes.
Got to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Oh, you know what? It was the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center that did a really good job. Let me try to bring that up.
So I can't find his birthday. I thought I could do it on the Encyclopedia of Surfing. It just says that he was born in 1925, but it doesn't give his actual date. But I'm going to read to you what Matt Warshaw wrote. He said, in 1947, Joe Quigg was 1 year out of the Navy. He was a GI Bill photography student at the Art Center College in Los Angeles. He was also a weekend board maker. No other 22-year-old in America has had as much surfing experience. Quigg made himself a belly board at the age of 4 and had been riding waves ever since. He was a solid performer, and he was earning a reputation as a first-rate craftsman too. It might take a few weeks, months even, to get a Joe Quigg surfboard, but each one was a thing of beauty. That summer, Quigg got a board request from Tommy Zahn, his best friend and fellow Navy vet. Zahn had just started dating Darylyn Zanuck, the tiny blonde 17-year-old daughter of 20th century Fox mogul Daryl Zanuck. I love that Daryl named his daughter Darylyn. Zahn asked Quigg to make a board for the 17-year-old girlfriend that was small enough and light enough that Darylyn could load it into the back seat of her Chrysler Town and Country convertible and then drive it up to Malibu. That board would become the very first Malibu chip. The boards Quigg helped design during this period were first and foremost a better riding, lighter, and more forgiving. But they were also a touchstone for a group of surfers who helped change the sport's disposition. In the hands of people like George Freeth, Tom Blake, Bob Simmons, surfing often looked to be the province of loners and misfits. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing, and they helped give the still new sport, a particular energy and independence. But Quigg and the rest of the chip innovators were closer to the spirit of Duke Kahanamoku. They smiled their way through the whole process, from designing boards to riding waves. They were sociable. They opened things up to the girls and beginners and managed the difficult trick. Rarely managed decades before, presenting the sport as both cool and friendly. So Joe Quigg, rest in peace.
Absolutely. A side note to the Darylyn Zanuck story. Tommy Zahn was dating both Marilyn Monroe and Darylyn Zanuck at the same time.
No way.
Yeah. And he goes on to tell the story that he was sort of like, which one should I choose? And he had this movie starlet who was actually totally into surfing, according to Tommy Zahn, like was keen and pretty good, relatively speaking. And Darylyn Zanuck, and he was like, well, I've got this movie star, or I've got the daughter of the most powerful man in Los Angeles. And for that reason, purely this is Tommy Zahn's story, not mine. He chose Darylyn because it seemed like a better move for the long run. So Interestingly, that board was called the Darylyn. They called that board the Darylyn. That board easily could have been called the Marilyn.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Quite the story. Thank you for that.
Yeah, buddy. Joe Quigg, rest in peace. Guy's a legend, full legend.
Total legend. Yeah.
And some might suggest not underappreciated, but underreported, or not given the credit that some of the other pioneers were given.
Yeah.
Anyway, rest in peace.
Yeah, definitely. And Scott, tell people about the Boardroom show. It's coming up on us.
Boardroom show is coming up September 25th and 26th at the Del Mar Fairgrounds, presented by US Blanks. And we've got a hall filled with the surfboard manufacturing industry, wetsuits, surfboards, fins, gear. We're going to have, of course, seminars. We're going to have an entire exhibit on how the surfboard is made, presented by RevChem Composites. We're going to have Best in Show, a great exhibit with over 50 to 75 Best in Show surfboards with cash and prizes for first, second, and third place. That is presented by Zio Boffa Organic Italian Wines. And of course, Icons of Foam, the Shape Off, honoring the craft of building the surfboard, which is this year honoring legendary shaper Pat Rawson. And all of that stuff and much, much more this year at the Boardroom International Surfboard Show, presented by US Blanks.
I just booked my hotel room yesterday. I'll be there.
It's going to be a heck of a good weekend. We're looking forward to it.
Me too.
By the way, when is your baby due?
Late October 26th, 27th.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So Lauren, I don't know if Lauren's going to make an appearance or not at the Boardroom show, because she'll be fully pregos.
Pregosaurus.
Yeah, it's a lot to ask to do a weekend away and then stand around on the concrete floor.
Yeah. No, that's not right. We would definitely provide her with a large lounge chair, but it would still be too much.
Get a couple of fanboys to keep her cool.
What you do, here's the move, bro. I'm going to tell you right now. You spend the extra money and you book a hotel at the Inn La Berge overlooking 15th Street, a gorgeous resort spa hotel, and you just let her relax out there all weekend, and you do the work.
Okay, I'll look into it. We got a baby on the way.
Take my advice here, bro.
We got a baby on the way. How many diapers can one night at La Berge pay for?
Diapers? You don't use diapers.
Well, no, anyway, what do you use? You put your baby out of a bidet.
Spray them down.
You got a baby bidet?
Okay, look, I gotta go. Until next time, Dave. Adios and aloha.
Before you go, do you have 1 second?
Yes.